Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. If you are a subscriber of our channel, you might have heard me talking about the date roadmap hundreds of times on the channel. I keep telling people you should complete the date roadmap to become a DevOps engineer. Of course, there are hundreds of new subscribers on this channel every day. So I want to make a detailed video explaining what exactly is this date roadmap. Whether you are taking a free DevOps course or you are taking a paid DevOps course, make sure the course that you are taking follows the date roadmap. So this is a very important video. Make sure you watch this video till the end. First of all, what exactly is this date roadmap? So this term does not exist. I just coined this term called date roadmap for DevOps. After making so many videos on the channel, I want a particular word so that people can follow my playlist in order to become a DevOps and cloud engineer. Because there are hundreds of videos on the channel, there are so many playlists. So everybody needs a proper roadmap, videos in order. That's why I wanted to come with a particular word. And that's when I coined this term called as date. So date means DevOps zero to hero for D. So D stands for DevOps zero to hero. A stands for AWS or Azure zero to hero. That means you should be learning any one of AWS or Azure. Then TE stands for Terraform, which is a popular tool in the infrastructure as code space at this point of time. And after learning all of this, only then you should move to Python. So this is the roadmap which I keep suggesting people. Now I will explain in detail what should be covered in DevOps zero to hero, what should be covered in AWS or Azure, Terraform, and Python. We have all of them free on the channel. So if you are looking for a free DevOps course or a free cloud engineer course, everything in the same order is already available on the channel. Just go to the channel Abhishek.Veeramalla, look for the playlist section. You have DevOps zero to hero, then you have Azure zero to hero, as well as AWS zero to hero. Then you can search for Terraform zero to hero. Again, that is available on the channel. And finally, we have a Python playlist called Python for DevOps. Additionally, we have a networking playlist. There is Ansible playlist. There are so many videos on Kubernetes troubleshooting, which are added things on the channel. So now let's go back and talk individually about each and every element of date. First is DevOps zero to hero. So whether you want to become a DevOps engineer or cloud engineer based on DevOps, you should first start with DevOps only. Do not jump into AWS or Azure because without learning DevOps, you cannot learn AWS or Azure if you want to become a cloud DevOps engineer. In DevOps, where should you start from? The very first point that you should start is understanding what exactly is DevOps and why is DevOps required for an organization. So here you should also understand how DevOps fits into the software development lifecycle. Is it an advantage to the software development lifecycle, or is it an overhead to the software development lifecycle? So you should start from this particular point. Any course that you are taking should start from this particular point. Otherwise, if they are starting from Git, Linux, then you will not understand what and why is DevOps required. Then you should move towards understanding Linux. In Linux as well, you don't have to go too much in detail of Linux if you are a beginner, because you will be lost in the world of Linux. Linux is an ocean. Just understand the fundamentals of Linux, understand what exactly is a virtual machine, what is the concept of virtualization, understand what is a hypervisor, and how to create virtual machines on the cloud platform. Of course, you also need to understand difference between a physical machine and a virtual machine. So important thing, do not go too much in detail of the Linux fundamentals because you will be lost there. Then the next thing that you need to focus is shell commands as well as shell scripting. Start with shell commands only. Do not start writing shell scripts or do not start searching for shell scripts on the internet, because again, if you start writing some complicated shell script, you might feel that scripting is difficult, and to become a DevOps engineer, you need to write a lot of scripts. Of course, you need to write a lot of scripts, but to get to that point, you should always start with basics, that is shell commands. And here, when you are learning the first part of the DATE roadmap, or when you're starting with DevOps, after you learn the shell commands, just write a simple shell script, or the course that you are taking should help you understand how to write basic shell scripts. Something like node monitoring, or how to create resources on AWS, or how to run a cron job, these kind of things, or something like log rotation. Then move towards another simple concept of DevOps, that is version control system. In the version control system, you have things like SVN, CVS, which are all obsolete. You don't have to learn them at this point of time. Just understand what is the concept of source code management. Okay. Then you need to understand what exactly is distributed version control system. The things like SVN, CVS, you don't have to learn them because companies are not using them at this point of time. Just understand what is version control system, what is distributed version control system, and then you should move directly to the concept of Git. In Git, there are implementations like GitHub, you have Bitbucket, or you have GitLab. Pick anyone. Every time you are learning a particular technology or a particular concept, only learn one implementation of that concept. Later, once you become expert in the concept, or once you complete the complete DevOps roadmap, only then move to a different tool. When you are learning GitHub, don't jump onto GitLab or don't jump onto the Bitbucket. So learn Git, some Git commands, how to push a commit to GitHub, how to pull source code from GitHub, what exactly is a pull request in GitHub, all these kind of things. Then the course that you are taking or a free roadmap that you are following should cover concepts like Ansible. Again, you don't have to jump into the extremely complicated concepts of Ansible. Understand why is Ansible required, understand how passwordless authentication is set up, and then you should have a capability of managing configuration of 2 to 3 virtual machines using Ansible. Start with easy. You don't have to take multiple virtual machines, or you don't have to automate multiple virtual machines using Ansible. Instead, start with basic. Similarly, when you are learning the basics of DevOps, just learn the basics of Terraform. A lot of people, what they do is when they are learning Terraform for the very first time, they directly go into the advanced concepts of Terraform. Like they literally try to create a EKS cluster using Terraform, or they try to set up a complicated infrastructure on AWS. At any point of time, once you start doing it, when you are learning basics, you will lose the interest on that particular topic. Whether it is me, whether it is someone who has been in the software industry for a while, when you are learning, learn fundamentals. Once you are good with the fundamentals, only then go to the extreme typical topics of that particular concept. Okay, so understand the basics of Ansible, understand the basics of Terraform, then move to the concept of CI/CD. So CI/CD, there are hundreds of tools in the market. When you look at the space of CI/CD, I think this is the most crowded thing I have ever seen, because you have GitHub Actions, Jenkins, GitLab pipelines, Bitbucket pipelines, you have Argo workflows, Tecton. I can keep naming hundreds of tools in the CI/CD space. Would you learn all of them? No. Abhishek, can you recommend one that I can start with? I will definitely recommend Jenkins. Now, some people might say, Abhishek, why are you recommending Jenkins? There are so many modern tools like GitHub Actions. You have Circle CI, you have Travel CI, you have Tecton, Argo workflows. See, anytime that you are learning, start with a tool that covers concepts very easily. So Jenkins has something called as configuration pipelines, where you don't have to start with the groovy pipelines of Jenkins. You can actually start with the user interface of Jenkins and create your very first CI/CD pipeline. Now that will give you some understanding through the user interface. Without writing code, you have created a CI/CD pipeline. And all the legacy companies, or many of the legacy companies, still use Jenkins. It is not out of the market, or it is not a player that is dead. Jenkins is still very widely used. Even in Red Hat today, we use Jenkins. So you don't have to think that Jenkins is obsolete. I don't want to start with it. I will start with something complicated. Start with Jenkins. Then the most easiest that you can go to is GitHub Actions. Okay, so in the CI/CD space, when you are learning, try to cover two tools, Jenkins as well as GitHub Actions, because they too solve problem taking different approach, and both of them are very good in the market at this point of time. So use Jenkins as well as GitHub Actions. Even if you take one of them, that is fine. Then go to Docker. Of course, I should not be saying Docker, I should say containers, but a lot of people directly understand Docker as containers or containers as Docker. That's why I'm writing it as Docker. But actually, you should understand the concept of containers. Take good amount of time here, because you have spent some time in DevOps. Now you can further go into the details of Linux when you are learning about containers, because here you need to understand what is the difference between a virtual machine and container. Why did this world of DevOps, or why did this world of software engineering evolve from virtual machines to containers? Because everybody were using virtual machines. Virtual machines were very good. You were able to deploy the applications. What made people to migrate from virtual machines to containers? Any concept that you're learning, focus on the why factor and try to understand the details of it. Similarly, when you are learning about containers, why? Why did people move from virtual machines to containers? What are the problems with virtual machines? How are containers addressing those problems? Now, when you are learning about containers, learn through Docker only. You have Podman as well, but prefer learning through Docker. Here you need to understand what exactly is container, how a container is created, how is it built, how is it deployed, how is it pushed to a container registry. Then learn how one container talks to the another container. That is container networking. Then learn how a container can use a volume, because your application needs some data, or your application wants to write some data. So how a container can use a volume. Then some best practices, how to reduce your container image size, how to make your container secure, multi-stage Docker builds, these kind of things. Then move to Kubernetes. Ideally, I'm talking about container orchestration. Just like how Docker is a known word for containers, similarly, Kubernetes is a known term for container orchestration. There were so many tools in the market like MesoS, Marathon, Cloud Foundry, but Kubernetes is the one that is ruling in the market. Another popular solution is Docker Swarm, but start with Kubernetes. So here you can understand what exactly is Kubernetes, how Kubernetes is solving the problem of container orchestration. Then you should be trying out few examples of Kubernetes, like try to deploy your first pod, try to understand the concept of service discovery using services, understand what exactly is ingress, how is traffic flowing to your cluster, then try to create a simple Kubernetes project. You have learned CI/CD, right? Try to integrate CI/CD with Kubernetes. So your course, whether it is free or paid, should cover topics in this way when you are learning DevOps. Additionally, you can also learn about observability when you are covering the basics of DevOps. This particular thing is not covered extensively in my DevOps Zero to Hero course. So this is a missing part. I just covered Prometheus and Grafana to a very basic extent, but I am going to do observability series very soon, which will be 7 days series, and that will be added to the DevOps Zero to Hero. So some people start directly with Kubernetes. Now you might have understood when starting with DevOps, which is first part of your DATE roadmap. You still have a cloud platform to learn. You still have Terraform to learn. You still have Python to learn. In the first part, you should learn all of these things. How much time would this take typically? At least I would believe it take 30 days just for this particular part. And every day you should be spending 2 to 3 hours, right? Every day 2 to 3 hours, spending 30 days, you can cover the fundamentals of DevOps. After completing this, you cannot become a DevOps engineer. This is just still basic that you are learning. Now, what to learn after this? Now you should move towards a cloud platform. I would suggest AWS or Azure, because whenever I'm learning something, I look forward for jobs, right? People who are learning from the channel, I believe they are learning for the jobs. If you are an experienced engineer, if you are a seasoned veteran, then you can learn Google Cloud Platform from other sources as well. But from the job point of view, you should be looking at AWS or Azure. Whatever you want to learn, AWS or Azure, we have both of the playlists on the channel. I will take one example. You can correlate another things with the same thing. So when you start with, let's say, AWS, you should always start with understanding what exactly is a cloud platform. Again, the course that you're taking should definitely cover this. What is private cloud? What is public cloud? What is hybrid cloud? Why exactly this cloud term became very popular? Then very basics of cloud, something like identity and access management, authentication and authorization in simple words, how to create an account with cloud, just like how to create a user in the cloud, how to give permissions to the user in the cloud, how to grant a user to a particular group in the cloud. These kind of things you will be learning in the identity and access management. Not only from the user point of view, but you should also learn from the service account point of view. Let's say one service wants to talk to the other service of cloud. So how a role should be assigned to the service in terms of identity and access management. Then when you move to the next one, after learning identity and access management, try to play with a very simple service of any cloud platform, that is the compute service. If you're talking about AWS, it is EC2. If you're talking about Azure, it is Azure Virtual Machines. So start playing with the compute service. It is very, very simple. You can just create a virtual machine and try to just perform actions like SSH, try to log into it, try to run your first shell script, or deploy a sample application onto it, or deploy some services like Docker, or maybe something like Jenkins, and try to access it. So this is something that you should do. Start with a basic service like compute. After you learn the compute service, then again jump onto another easy service on the platform, that is virtual private cloud. In AWS, it is called as virtual private cloud. In Azure, we call it as VNet or virtual network. So this is just nothing but in the cloud platform, you can create a network. When you want to make that network private to your organization, you would need a virtual private cloud or virtual network. So try to understand what exactly is it, how to deploy your compute resources onto the virtual private cloud, what are the different components of virtual private cloud. This is very, very important. In your virtual private cloud, you have 10 plus services which are important, such as the routing service, security groups, ingress, egress. You should be understanding all of them, including the DNS service. If you don't have the basic knowledge of networking, you should also learn about a subnet, a public subnet, a private subnet, how the subnets are mapped to the route tables. All of these things you should cover when you are learning about VPC or VNet. If you have any doubt, you can go to our playlist. For example, if you go to our AWS playlist, you can see I have covered the topics in the same order. So you will learn about VPC, then you will learn about security groups and NACL. You will learn about Route 53. And after learning them, you will also do a project using all the virtual private cloud concepts or most of the virtual private cloud concepts and deploy a simple application in it. So spend good amount of time learning about the VPC concepts because this is most asked in the interview as well. Then you should learn about storage services, because end of the day, whatever you are doing on cloud, you need some storage. You want to store some files, or you want to add storage to your compute, or maybe you want to add that storage to your Kubernetes cluster. Anything that you're doing, you should learn about the storage services. Then move towards understanding something like CI/CD on cloud. So you have learned CI/CD, but you have learned CI/CD on-premises or using any other thing. Now it's time to learn CI/CD implementation on that particular cloud platform. If you're talking about Azure, Azure has something called as Azure DevOps. In AWS, you have multiple services like the code pipelines, you have code build, you have code deploy. So you should be learning those things. Again, you can find them here on the channel. After learning the storage services, we will learn about the CI/CD code pipeline and one project on the CI/CD. Then another important service on the cloud platforms that you should focus are the monitors. Because as a DevOps engineer, as SRE engineer, you will play a lot with the monitors, whether it is to understand the health of your compute resources, or to set up some cron jobs, or to perform monitoring of any stale resources. For any of these things, you would need monitors on the cloud platform. So you should learn about these monitors next. Then let's move to something very critical, or some things that are little difficult, such as serverless functions. So serverless functions have multiple use cases as DevOps engineers, such as if you want to perform cloud cost optimization. For any organization, cloud cost is important. They want to reduce the cloud cost. So how would you reduce cloud cost, let's say on AWS, using Lambda functions? What are the different cases that you can take? Then move towards the services like Kubernetes on cloud. In AWS, you should be learning about EKS. In Azure, you should be learning about AKS. So again, you will spend good amount of time with your past knowledge on Kubernetes. You have learned about Kubernetes when you are doing DevOps. So now you can take that knowledge to the next level. Of course, here for learning Kubernetes, you might have created a EKS cluster, but when you are learning the cloud platform, not just creation of EKS cluster, but you should try some very good hands-on project on Kubernetes. If you want examples, again, go back to the channel. We have deployed a 3-tier application. We have deployed a e-commerce application, different kinds of platforms on the Kubernetes cluster. If you ask me, Abhishek, can you tell one thing? Try any e-commerce platform, because e-commerce platforms have multiple services. So you can understand orchestration of those services, creation of persistent volume claims, persistent volumes, all those things, or custom resource definitions. Now take a little advanced step and implement a complicated CI/CD pipeline on the cloud platform, where you use the cloud platform's Kubernetes cluster and also implement the GitOps principles. For continuous delivery, you should be learning about GitOps and implement the GitOps principles on the CI/CD pipeline on the cloud platform. Then as a DevOps engineer, again, compliance and security are very important for you. So you should be learning the compliance and security services on that cloud platform. For example, if you take AWS, you should be learning about the compliance and security like AWS config, or you should be learning about securing secrets on AWS using systems parameters or AWS secrets. I mean, the secret store, secrets manager, these kind of things. After learning this, every cloud platform has a infrastructure as code tool or their way of creating infrastructure. Now, the reason why I put this at the end is because this is opinionated by the cloud platform. That is, every cloud platform has their opinion on it. So you don't have to jump in detail, or you don't have to deep dive into it. For example, AWS has cloud formation templates. You don't have to be expert in the cloud formation templates, because anyways, next we are going to cover IAC using Terraform. So you should be learning Terraform after you complete the cloud platform. And when you are learning Terraform, just pick up one cloud platform, whatever you have taken, AWS or Azure, and start creating the infrastructure using Terraform on those cloud platforms. Whether you want AWS, take AWS as provider. If you want Azure, take Azure as provider. Anything that you take, implement all the concepts of Terraform on that cloud provider. I will get here in a while. Before that, once you conclude learning the cloud platform, what you need to do is you should also learn things like the load balancers on that particular cloud platform and steps to migrate on premises to that particular cloud platform. Because in interviewer is going to ask you, how would you migrate on premises to the cloud platform? And by now, once you complete the DevOps Zero to Hero and AWS Zero to Hero, you should cover at least 10 to 15 projects. You might ask, but Abhishek, how can I cover so many projects? Whenever you are learning a particular thing, do the practical hands-on. If you're learning AKS or EKS, that would be one project. If you're learning CI/CD on cloud, that would be one project. When you're learning serverless for cloud cost optimization, that would be a project. When you are learning VPC, that would be a project. So similarly, whenever you are learning a concept, you should implement a practical hands-on on that particular implementation. So going back, next thing your course should cover is IAC using Terraform. Of course, there are another IAC tool or different IAC tools like Pulumi, or there are infrastructure management tools like Crossplane, but Terraform is very much preferred. Now, what about Terraform? What should I learn? Abhishek, when I go to Terraform documentation, it is very scary. There are so many things. There are HCL templates. What should I learn in Terraform? So when it comes to Terraform, again start with what exactly is it? What is infrastructure as code? And what problem is it solving? Second thing that you will do is learn about the providers of Terraform. So Terraform has providers like AWS, Azure, GCP, DigitalOcean. You have OpenStack. So understand what exactly is this providers. How Terraform uses this concept of providers to automate the infrastructure or makes API calls with that particular infrastructure provider. Once you learn about providers, then you can move to the concepts like writing your first Terraform project, a very basic one, where you learn what exactly is Terraform init, what exactly is Terraform plan, what exactly is Terraform apply. And while learning this, or after learning these basic things, you should focus on the Terraform state file. Majority of your interview questions will be on the Terraform state file because of the implementation of Terraform. To be honest, the state file implementation of Terraform is not at its best because it's a single point of source, or it's a only point of source where Terraform stores all the configuration, and it is also not completely reconciling in nature. That means once you update something manually on your cloud platform, Terraform does not reconcile those changes, or it does not fix that changes automatically. So there are so many questions that you will see about state file. What if the state file is deleted? How to keep state file up to date? Can you store state file in a version control system? How to secure your state file? So there will be so many questions about the state file. Make sure you spend good amount of time here. Or all of the concepts that I have explained are covered in your free course or the paid course. Then you should be learning things like provisioners in Terraform. Then you can learn about the secrets management in Terraform. If you have any sensitive information, how do you handle that? Then you can learn about the variable precedence. You will learn about variables by now, but in Terraform, there are almost 15 to 20 places where you can store the variables. So what exactly is the variable precedence? How Terraform handles that particular precedence? Then you should be able to create a Terraform project where you do something like using Terraform, create a EKS cluster in the VPC that you have created on the AWS. So create a VPC and then deploy EKS cluster onto the VPC. Again, all the things are covered in our Terraform Zero to Hero playlist. So if you just go back to the channel and look at the playlist section, you can find all of them in the order that I have explained, right? So this is a Terraform playlist. Finally, once you complete all of this, only then go to languages like Python. Maybe many people ask me, Abhishek, should I go with Golang? I would say no. Although I'm a Go developer, I've been working on Go for the past 5 years. It is one of my favorite programming languages, but still, I would say do not go with Go at this point of time because the use cases are limited. There are very less use cases why you should be using Go over Python, and why is Go used by DevOps or SRE engineers. So focus initially on the Python. If you want to understand about Go, again, I have a video why DevOps engineers use Go. It's a 30 minutes video. You can watch it, but focus more on Python, because there are so many use cases of Python. Why DevOps engineers use Python? What are the things that you cannot do with shell scripting, where you should go with Python? Such things are important. Python is vast, it's a universe. So follow a particular order where how Python is used by DevOps engineers. That is important for you. You don't have to know about NumPy in Python, or you don't need to know about scikit-learn of Python, or you don't need to know something like pandas in Python. If you know these things, it's good, but it's not required as a DevOps engineer. What is required? Start with the basics. Understand why Python is used over shell scripting. I mean, in which use cases? Abhishek, DevOps engineers use shell. DevOps engineers use Python. So when you do go for Python over shell, this is point where you should start. Then learn about simple things like variables in Python. Then you should focus something on the expressions in Python. How to write functions in Python. Of course, before this, you also need to know what exactly are data types in Python, what are the different data types, and use case of each data type. Then learn something about loops in Python, conditionals in Python. Then you should focus something like modules and packages in Python. After learning these things, focus on projects in Python. That is, some projects, like I would go for 2 to 3 projects. In my playlist, I have 5 projects, but you can start with file operations. A very simple project where you can learn about file operations, something like how to write data into a file, some Excel sheet where you want to write large amount of data, and how to put this file into a S3 bucket. Then some classic DevOps use cases, something like how do you automate Jira creation using Python, or how do you invoke a GitHub webhook to create some actions on Jira, or to create some actions on the third-party tools. So if a developer on a pull request comments something like /Jira, immediately a Jira ticket should be created. Or if a developer writes something like /ServiceNow, a ticket has to be created on ServiceNow. Some use cases like that, which are very classic in the organization. So these kind of projects using Python, you can again refer to my Python for DevOps playlist on the channel. So this has to be the order. Whether you're taking free course or you're taking paid course, you should follow the same order. Your course should follow the same order. And usually it takes at least 100 days to complete all of them. And overall, while you do this, it should cover some 20 to 30 projects. When I say projects, don't get confused. I'm using this word called as projects because a lot of people use that word. Otherwise, I mean practical hands-on sessions. So if you're learning Kubernetes, you should do a couple of practical hands-on sessions on Kubernetes. So this is how you should learn DevOps and cloud. I hope this video provides you a very clear information. Let me know if you have any more questions in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching today's video. See you all in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.